How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lo4f, and today I'm going to go and do this contract called the Flooded Land. I think it's in the second set of contracts, and it says you've got to go and visit like this location. It's pretty near to like the yard where there's a twin steer and that. The place you got to visit is just like a blue square. You got to drive through on the way that's there. It doesn't really mean anything. And then once you do drive through there, 4 lots of medium pipes will appear along that section, and then you've got to take all of them really to the farm on Burned Forest. They're technically dropping them off in 2 different locations, but they're practically next to each other, both on the farm. So yeah, and then that's about it really. Obviously each medium pipe is 2 slots of cargo, and there's 4 of them in total, so you're going to need 8 slots of cargo. So for this setup, I started with the Tayga, I don't know, the new one, Tony the Tayga. I've got the ramped flatbed, and then as you can see there, I put the Lo4f on with an off-road 2-slot trailer, but when you drive it onto the ramped flatbed, it's wide enough that the tyres actually sit either side and it doesn't pack very well or anything like that. So I went back, I kind of just got the normal trailer, which this one, I've never been too much of a fan of this. It's got really skinny tyres, and then those like mud flap things in front of the tyres sort of act like shovels, so once you drag them through deep mud, they kind of, yeah, they scrape through and the trailer drags really more than it rolls along. But it was able to fit, so yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, and it just worked out better. I still had to detach the trailer from the Lo4f to kind of pack both of them, but once I clicked pack trucks and trailers, it actually did pack both of them. Whereas yeah, for that other off-roading trailer, not only it wouldn't pack it because the tyres sat too wide, but even when I'd detach the trailer, it's got like little legs on each corner of the trailer, which are probably, I don't know, technically sort of handy for keeping the trailer quite stable once you drop it off somewhere. But yeah, like they just made it sit pretty awkwardly. I wasn't able to pack it, and then if I was driving along, it would have skidded around everywhere and very likely just slid off the trailer. It doesn't really matter, they're both kind of the same trailer anyway, it's just technically this one's like not an off-road version. And yeah, I went for the Tayga B, like the newer one in the end. Originally, well, yeah, I suppose I do still need it. I was going to say, I needed something that I could have a crane, a sideboard, and a ramped flatbed, and then, because obviously this mission is an 8 slots worth of cargo, so I could have brought an 8-slot trailer. That's obviously what I was trying to avoid. It's just a pain in the arse. There's certain sections you'd probably get along just fine with the 8-slot trailer, but yeah, because the legs and that catch so much, there's a few sharpish corners like you can go around on this map and stuff, so I just think I would have got there in the end, but it just would have been a bit of a long, slow one of like, you know, getting stuck on everything, trying to rip the trailer kind of out of the terrain more than actually just concentrating on sort of driving there. And yeah, I suppose I was just experimenting with a few different ways to kind of take 8 slots of cargo basically. So what I was originally thinking when I was kind of setting up at the garage was that's what I had the crane for. You do actually, I will say though, you need to manually load all of these pipes, so whatever way you do, you're going to need a crane. For example, if you took, I don't know, like the Colob and an 8-slot trailer, you're still going to need a crane to load them onto the trailer, so therefore like the Zix is kind of out of the question. Yeah, what I could have done and was going to do was kind of stack 1 lot of medium pipes in the sideboard, 2 on the ramped flatbed, and then use the crane and just kind of balance them on top of the ones in the sideboard and sort of pin them down and carry them that way. I still could have done it, but then just while I was loading the Lo4f onto the trailer, I kind of just, the idea clicked in my head that I could go and get a 2-slot scout trailer basically, and yeah, as I've not really done that option too often, and even since they added the option to like pack trucks and trailers, I've done it once or twice now, but really it's pretty rare I ever kind of like take something with a truck and trailer along. I've done it before with like another truck and a trailer, and that didn't go too well. I think that was on phase 8. I remember being on Heartlands. I just remember it being a nightmare. I think I might have took a step toe, and that in itself wasn't terrible, it's just the tyres are quite small, so by the time it was sat in like the ruts in the road, the legs of the crane were catching in the ground and all sorts. Yeah, in the end, going through like all the different trucks, there wasn't a whole lot to choose from really. I mean, bearing in mind, I wanted something preferably with the high gear, just because the amount of distance I've got to do on this mission. So that kind of ruled out most things. Like, for example, I was considered briefly the new Derry Special 15C, but yeah, that just would have been slow as hell. To be fair, I mean, it could do this mission. It's got a crane, a sideboard, it could have a ramped flatbed and all that. But yeah, just because it's pretty damn slow, I didn't really think I'd get much benefit from it. Stuff like the Zix is out because you can't have a crane and the sideboard and that. Yeah, like the Kolob, that sort of stuff's out. Bruce and Dan and all that lot, because they've got the advanced special gearbox, they're also out. And it only really left me with... Well, at first I was going to get the Dolphin, or again, it was like one of the top contenders, but then I can't have a trailer, sideboard and crane, so that was out. And then it pretty much left me with this. I think the Voron AE, you can also have crane, sideboard, etc. I mean, there obviously is some others, like there's the big Paystar 5600, that'd be able to carry all three. But as well, I was kind of like, you know, I think the Cat CT680 might be able to have a crane and sideboard, etc. But there's quite a bit of off-roading to do in this mission, particularly the route I've drawn. I kind of went through the middle of the map just to sort of mix it up a little bit. Yeah, so that's how I kind of settled on this truck in the end. And as I was going through the colours as well, it was looking pretty nice in white. It looks quite nice and clean. So that's what I got, a colour match loaf. Goddamn horse of me. Yeah, when I got to this section, I can't really see because the water's all pretty boggy, but I believe there's like tree roots kind of that are just, my rear tyres had just gone over, and I believe that's catching like the front dolly axle on this ramped flatbed, which is a bit disappointing. Whatever it is, something's hooked on pretty well because it's just absolutely stopping me dead, even with like full force of the winch pulling on a tree in front and everything. I just kind of, yeah, sort of drove to the right a little bit, and eventually it just kind of popped loose and actually let me go forward. That's one thing that has always been a bit awkward with this trailer though, where like the tyres, particularly on the dolly axle, yeah, they sort of behave as if the hitboxes on them are squares, not circles. So when you're dragging it along and you get to stuff like that, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't tend to roll over stuff, it tends to just hook into it. I don't know if it's because it's like a dolly axle, if just, you know, the way, because it rotates and everything, if they've just made the hitbox a little bit more kind of basic, like a sort of rectangle underneath the trailer that then rotates with like the hitch of the trailer and stuff. I don't know, but it's always been a bit iffy like that. But yeah, last time I tried taking a truck on a trailer and all the rest of it, it just doesn't work well really, generally because the truck then counts as quite a lot of weight once it's packed on the trailer, and the trailer normally boats around like quite a lot as well. And then yeah, like I say, tonight I was just pretty curious to try this setup because obviously it's a goddamn horse of me. He's a bit lighter, and as you can see, it's not really being too much of a troll like with the trailer or anything either. I believe it does overall. I don't know, this truck, I've used this for previous missions, even on this phase, and certain parts of the map it drops the hammer and you get into high gear, and once I'm like in high gear now, it's ticking along just fine. I think having like a loaf and a trailer packed on the ramped flatbed does make the overall thing a bit heavier, and it can just catch you out. Yeah, bits like this I suppose, once you hit like the slower bits, it just feels a bit like a tractor pulling competition then, where you're trying to pull the trailer through mud, and it starts to slow you down. You just start wheel spinning at that point. You're best off really dropping into back to auto or something. But yeah, it's still, like I say, it's a bit of an interesting way to kind of mix it up as far as getting 8 slots of cargo. So really, yeah, your 3 options are an 8-slot trailer, this setup but without the loaf and trailer, and then stack it on top of your sideboard so you'll have 2 cargo high and kind of pin it down with the crane. Or, yeah, this setup really. And again, I mean, strictly speaking, I could have just left the loaf off and kind of winched it behind me as normal, but just out of curiosity, yeah, as it's one of them rare chances to actually be able to pack everything onto this ramped flatbed, it was, I thought it was pretty cool. See, now it finally got its foot down. Like I say, I do believe there is like various areas of the map that they've just coded certain ways, so it seems to a degree, no matter what truck you've got, certain sections will just force you to go slow. And then yeah, certain sections like that, once the sort of coding restriction seems to have been lifted, it kind of goes back to normal and you can actually just tick along at, yeah, like a normal speed in high gear. You get all your revs, you get all your grip. cutting through this bit, I didn't technically need to do this. I could have followed the road, but it's just more of an angle I was actually curious to see. It worked out pretty well cutting across here. There is like a little ditch running along here that could catch you out a little bit. I wasn't too worried about the truck making it across. I was more thinking like these rocks on the other side. I didn't really want it to tip the ramp flatbed. But in the end it went alright. As long as you're still like keeping the power going with the truck and you're pulling forward on the ramp flatbed, you almost sort of don't give it time to tip sometimes. I suppose it's a little bit like riding a bike, or if you're sat on a bike, it's obviously if you're going along at like 10 miles an hour, it's easy just to stay upright and balance because you're going forward. If you obviously stop on the bike, you're going to tip at some point. But it's nice to know though, the ramp flatbed with a scout and a trailer packed actually behaves pretty normal. It's not like a complete troll. I mean, I'm sweeping around that corner there. It was leaning a little bit, but not anything that's like stopping the journey. Yeah, so you can see just back there, drive through like a little blue square. It's a bit annoying to be honest, because I keep hitting some of these blue squares for various missions, like when I'm on other missions. It seems like a bit of a pointless checkpoint. I suppose it's just to make these 4 medium pipes spawn, really. For some reason they probably just didn't want them being spawned on the map before you actually do this mission. But I mean, by doing it now, I could poach them all really, and then I don't know, try and stash them on a trailer, restart the mission. Gets his victory horn, blows the fences up. And then yeah, it's not the end of the world. These cranes are still crap, but obviously yeah, you're going to have to do manual loading when you get here. Particularly these blue cranes. The yellow ones have got the edge. They're not much better. They're still too weak, but this one can't even seem to reach far enough back to the trailer, which I don't really know why. There's like kind of a standard issue sideboard behind it, which is kind of the same with most other trucks. So yeah, you end up having to just do stuff like this. I'm trying to sort of push the end of the cargo to slide it onto the trailer a bit more. I'll edit some of this out because it's just, yeah, the cranes, they struggle to lift even this cargo. Like once you're at full extension, they're not too happy about getting lifted up in the air and all sorts. And once you, I don't know, if you played this game long enough, you just kind of get used to the disappointment of the cranes, really. And in the end, yeah, the crane couldn't quite reach stacking another piece of cargo, so it's just easier to disconnect, reverse. A little edit there, but I got one set of pipes on the trailer. This one kind of holding in the air because I'll get the loaf lined up in a sec. Not sure why it auto disconnected the crane then when I attached the trailer. Quick edit here as well because it's taken bloody forever just to rotate the pipes. But we're on. Looks like Loaf's got his own little like rocket launcher trailer now. Sort of prefer it like that, to be honest. A missile trailer would be pretty fun. I've said it before, if we had like a map with a, I don't know, like a snowy area, sort of avalanche. You know when you see on YouTube, they have to like fire howitzers and that at a mountain to make an avalanche. That's what we need, that sort of mission on here. It's about time really we were allowed to blow something up on this map. It's only fair. I don't know, speaking of blowing something up, with that someone put a bomb to that cafe the other day that killed that Russian guy. But it's just something made me laugh when I was reading in the comments, and there was that woman supposedly took the packaging and stuff, and then someone wrote in the comments they're just making her an scapegoat, and I don't know why, but it made me laugh my head off. An scapegoat. First, well, obviously because the saying's wrong, but it reminded me of, or one I was picturing like, what the hell is an scapegoat? It's like when someone breaks out of prison, like release the scapegoat. But no, it also reminded me of like when I was a kid, when I actually learnt the word scapegoat, and It was an RE lesson. This teacher as well, Mr. Lewin, I think his name was. He drove a Reliant Robin, an old like a little blue three-wheeler. Yeah, he must have been talking about scapegoat, something to do with the Bible, and saying they made someone out to be a scapegoat. And I wasn't really listening because I was talking to my mate. And then, to be fair, he was like one of those teachers that never really like bollocked you or anything like that. He just then asked me like, yeah, you know, can you explain what a scapegoat is? Because I hadn't listened to him at all. I still remember to this day, which is how you see I've learnt the word. I was like, is it some kind of mountain goat? Which obviously, yeah, completely wrong, but I don't know, that's always stuck in my head from when I was a kid doing that, and I thought that was probably the worst answer possible to what is a scapegoat, as, yeah, is it some kind of mountain goat? But no. Being a scapegoat is even better, I think. Yeah, it's pretty funny, I don't know, I wonder, like, they must say that all the time, an scapegoat. At least I had the excuse of being, like, pretty young when that happened. I remember as well, when I was about 5, I got a bollocking off the teacher for... I had to read out some book, it was probably like some Biff, Chip and Kipper type book, and the word in there was island, and it's obviously spelled I-S-L-A-N-D, and I didn't know what it was, and she gave me a right mouthful. And it was like, Jesus Christ, I'm 5 years old. You're the teacher. Technically, is it not your fault that I don't know the word island? But yeah, I was like, probably either 4 or 5. I think I was in the year where you kind of, yeah, turned 5 at some point during that year. But I suppose it worked in the end. That one stuck in my head as well. But I'd never seen the word before, never been asked to spell it or anything. It was just like, what the hell? Island? What's an island? Yeah, it's funny as well, because she was like, when I was that young, I always thought of her as like one of my favourite teachers. And then looking back, she was a right menace. Like, she was like a really strict, mardy old bag, really. But I don't know why she was like my favourite teacher back then. I went a little bit sort of, well, let's say a little bit quick around that corner. I think just the trailer on the Lo4f kind of clipped the rock on the inside, and yeah, the trailer couldn't resist it. That's one of the reasons why I originally selected that off-road trailer, because, well, it's funny, yeah, like this trailer sits narrow enough that I was actually able to park it like on top of the ramped flatbed and pack it, whereas the off-road version of the 2-slot trailer, obviously the tyres sat too wide, so it wouldn't even give you the option. Had I had that trailer, chances are this cargo wouldn't have tipped then. But as I say, I think I clipped like one of the inside tyres on a rock, so it just more pinged it over than kind of naturally tipped just from leaning around a corner. But it wasn't too bad. Like I say, you think this, even like this corner is a perfect example. Imagine trying to get the 8-slot trailer around this corner. And again, if you were going to take the 8-slot trailer, because you still need a crane for this mission, yeah, like something like the Club or the Zix, both of them are out, and they're quite handy for towing that 8-slot trailer, because at least their chassis sit nice and high, so it sort of keeps the trailer legs off the ground to a degree. If you had like a smaller truck like I've got now, yeah, the legs are like just hovering like an inch or two above the ground at the best of times. But yeah, like I say, that one wasn't too bad in the end. I don't mind a bit of cargo crashing, it's just, yeah, again, the cranes that are such a troll that it kind of spoils like rescue missions and that to a degree. I used to quite like doing them more, really, but yeah, as the cranes keep just getting weaker and weaker for some weird reason. So it's a pretty good example there. I mean, this truck is definitely a pretty powerful truck. I used it on some previous missions, it was hauling a trailer just fine. There was a couple of times tonight, not loads, but where it had hit like a bit like that, where I think it was trying to jump into second gear, then was going back down to first. And then the power barely even wants to kick back in. It's one of those annoying, like, the burned forest section trees sort of lying across the road. It kept trying to catch all my wheels there as well. Got off with it pretty lightly, but gave it a go. As someone said, yeah, the other day in the comments, I like magnetic trees, and they are pretty much. They try and stick to your truck. And yeah, I came to this gateway. It was kind of the obvious one to come to anyway, but obviously when I did yesterday's mission, I kind of got mixed up on which gateway I end up at on the other map. Yeah, popped out. Like on this one, the normal one, I believe this was the... Yeah, this was like the first normal gateway we get. And yeah, from here, kind of cut up towards the right. Instead of following that road all the way around, there's like a little shortcut here through the forest, which I quite like doing. And then up to the road, and as I say, you can see there's like Breach 1 and Breach 2 it's called or something, but they're practically next to each other. There's another white loaf. White loafs all over the place. There was one where I was packing those medium pipes as well. And yeah, I wasn't sure really, going along like this section of road, if the fuel would last or not. I'm getting pretty low on fuel. But I remember, funnily enough, it was that last white loaf that was there. Well, I must have been taking some materials to the sawmill, I think. And I ended up being like quite worried I was going to run out of fuel along here, but then the truck kind of dropped the hammer pretty quick. It might have even been a Tayga as well. I mean, I think these medium pipes do kind of have some substantial weight to them. I think you could sort of tell it was a bit heavier than like if it was, I don't know, say 6 boxes of like service spare parts or something. And yeah, along with the gearbox being like iffy these days, I also think as well these custom muds I've got on, they're possibly not the best kind of tyre really. But you can see there where I keep running out of like blips of power. It's not really the tyre's fault, because if it's not spinning the tyres at all, then yeah, it's not really on them, it's just kind of, I don't know, all these weird oversensitive rev caps going on. And I was looking there, the loaf behind me, it keeps kind of driving in little bursts the way it does when you're towing something like that, but the winch cable is slack most of the time, so it's not like the I'm basically dragging the loaf along with me. That's kind of putting in its own effort. It's just, yeah, between the crazy gears and the weight of the cargo, I think. I mean, I still don't regret taking the high range gear box, but at this point, I suppose if you had an off-road gearbox, the yeah, just sticking in high-low at the minute would be pretty nice. At least this truck's got diffs always on though, so that's a start. And this bit, I don't really know which is the best way to go round on this rock. Possibly if I went like the left-hand side, it's probably a little bit straighter, which might have helped, just with like the length of this cargo and then the loaf and his trailer behind me. It's not too bad though, it actually did make it up here, even in auto as well. I thought it'd moan a little bit more and keep trying to just jump up to second, kick me back out to first. Yeah, I just remembered as well, I got a letter from the bloody, what do you call it, TV licence people. They bloody never give up. I've not had a TV licence for years. For those of you that like, I mean, it's not literally like a, you know, you have to get a licence to watch TV. It's basically like the world's oldest TV subscription kind of thing. Yeah, it's like, it made sense back in the day, like say back in the 50s odd or something when they introduced it. It was like when, you know, TVs were pretty new, and it made sense as like, we'll collect a bit of money off everybody to make TV shows to kind of justify people buying this new technology, so there is actually programs to be played on there, because obviously at the time not everyone would have been making shows to show on TV, so it made sense back then. But yeah, these days it's just like trying daylight robbery really. It's not like I can watch normal TV and all the rest of it, it's just what they call like the BBC channels, which are like basically the government owned channels that, yeah, kind of lean a particular way. But yeah, for some reason, like, they're just every year or so. Funnily enough, I hadn't really heard of them during COVID, but yeah, I got a letter the other day, so just got to go online and declare that I don't need it, because yeah, I don't I don't watch any of their channels. Ever since they got rid of Top Gear, that was like the last thing I watched really, and once they got rid of like Jeremy Clarkson, James May and Richard Hammond, that kind of screwed that one up. Yeah, got this far. Was it about 15 odd litres left or something? I don't know why, I get very territorial about Lo4f's roof rack fuel as well. Transferred a bit over, I was like, well, I mean I could just transfer the lot, but I didn't want to. I wanted to save a little bit for myself. It should be enough though. Not got far to go on the mission now. You can see as well, when I pulled the Lo4f up like from behind the trailer, he was doing fine pulling his own cargo. He's done an off-road rallying course, the old Lo4f has. Yeah, I actually think at certain points, like the Lo4f would be quicker than this. I know he's a goddamn professional, but never ceases to amaze me. At least it's a bit of downhill with a wind behind me. But yeah, that TV licensing, I need to remember to go and fill that out, even though it's a complete waste of time. Like I say, it's basically you pay that, it's like a subscription, so then you can watch their channels. But obviously back in the day, and even now to a degree, well, I don't know, I've not been on it for years, it wouldn't surprise me now if you tried going on it. You probably have to like enter your email and all that crap. But yeah, because they couldn't like stop everyone from watching it, they just kind of assume that everyone is watching it and try and pad everyone down for some money. But that's the idea, if I paid it then I'm allowed to watch their channels. But yeah, they're pretty much all crap on their channels the last time I had it, so I'm certainly in no rush to get it. Yeah, that was that little shortcut I went through. Worked out pretty nicely. I was a little bit... There's like a few awkward bumps going along there. I thought maybe if I get unlucky it might flick the Lo4f trailer over and unpack the cargo, but thankfully it didn't. And yeah, this last little bit, once I was able to get into high gear, again, pretty nice pace, pretty good little journey at this point. And it just sort of shows as well, like the Lo4f's ticking along behind, keeping its own speed, so it's not necessarily like this truck, it's just, it depends how they've coded each section of road really. Which yeah, personally I sort of disagree with. I think they should just code all roads as like a blanket, well obviously like you got different dirt, mud, etc. But then yeah, each individual truck should, you know, the better trucks have an easier time of it and all the rest of it. Whereas I suppose it pans out that way in the majority of situations, but there's certainly some roads and sections and patches where yeah, it doesn't matter if you're in like one of the worst trucks or the best trucks, they're all forced to go at like a couple of miles an hour. And then these where I've got to drop them off, typical, they stick a bloody tree right across, kind of just, yeah, I was like, oh, do I go left round the tree or do I run it over? I figured if I go left I'd end up dragging like the rear of the trailer and the Lo4f all over like the main trunk roots part, which is kind of the worst part, so I attempted running over it instead. Got the front axle over, the rear axle wasn't too happy about it though. Thankfully at this point I was just touching the box. That's what she said. Yeah, dropped two of those off randomly. It took my one out the sideboard and one off the back of the ramped flatbed. I suppose in that sense really it'd be nice if you could choose which cargo to drop off, I suppose, because in various situations it'd be nice if like the pipes were still left in my truck, and then in theory I could release the trailer to the wild at this point. But yeah, drop two off there, like I say, drive just a couple of truck lengths forward or whatever to this section. Drop one lot of medium pipes that I've got left on here. Don't know why the trailer swung around so dramatically there. And yeah, since it did, it was kind of blocking that little bridge thing, so I'll just quickly move it out of the way. Not sure if there was originally supposed to be some kind of animation going on for this. And yeah, well, I mean there, you can see a Lo4f driving along fine with that trailer, it's not like too heavy or anything. Yeah, get that done, job's a good one. I think the money, was it 10,000 or something? I can't quite see because it shrank it down. But yeah, now animation going on, just says like it's stopped the, I don't know, flooding essentially, I suppose, on this farm. Yeah, that's about it for today though. I hope you've enjoyed, I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreon members. Get yourself a Lo4f because he's goddamn beast. There's a little victory horn, and I'll be back soon.